Welcome to Exceptional Effort, Mind and Body. Today we're talking about your gut, preventative and long-term strategies. Preventative and long-term health strategies. And we have with us Heather, Annemie and Stephen, and myself, Damian Andrews. And I know from my perspective, I've probably taken my gut a little bit for granted in how I've treated it throughout my life, and probably haven't really thought through the effects of what happens in my gut and how that affects my long-term health.
You and all of us.
So
I feel like everybody gets serious at some point as an adult or as a young adult, or sometimes later in life. We wake up to realize how we're treating our bodies, but not necessarily when we're younger.
Because I know, there was a time when I was, I think it was probably about 22, and I went through this really full-on health phase where I was a vegetarian, full-on vegetarian, and I didn't drink, I didn't smoke. And I remember actually I was on a trip, a work thing, and I was in Malaysia, and we were talking, and I was with some guys from Malaysia. They offered me a cigarette, and I said, no, I don't smoke. And they offered me a drink. I said, don't drink. And they looked at me and said, you have sex, right? And I just was like, it was just this, seemed really weird and foreign that someone would take that level of health, or to go to that level with their health at that time. But the other thing with that is I never really thought about, again, my gut. I just thought about it from a perspective of what I was doing from my health overall. I never thought about it as the flow-on effect from my gut. But I guess that's something that we really want to look at is how important is your gut to your overall health?
Well, the gut is the root of your body, let's say, like a plant. It's where you will extract all the minerals and the vitamins and everything which is essential to feed your body. So this is how I would like to see my gut, is to put the root of the plant. When the root of the plant is diseased, well, then of course the plant will not flourish.
Yeah. Definitely. And the gut, your whole GI system, is also a reflection of your skin and of your brain. So we have in our guts, we have this mirroring of what's going on in your brain and what's going on the outside of your body. So it's constantly talking to us as well. It's constantly telling us what's going on inside of us.
Yes. You can see it very well when my son, he had acne, for instance. That is a typical reflection also what is going on in the gut. As soon as we added some zinc, for instance, the acne was not disappearing completely, but it was becoming much better, because this was typically an element that was easing the, how could I say this, that was soothing the gut.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that we could talk about as far as mindset and stress and that kind of thing related to the gut is which comes first, chicken or egg, right? And I think to my understanding, there's really a duality, that what you eat and how you're treating your gut can therefore affect your stress levels, but the reverse is true as well. And so we have to kind of come at it from both sides. And that could be why many people may find it confusing to hear advice and instructions from health experts and dietitians and people out there, because they're saying, this is the reason you feel stressed, or that's the reason that you're overweight. And multiple things can be true, actually, because it goes both ways with the gut.
I relate to that a lot. Like from when I was younger, I was actually quite nervous, and I would always feel that kind of tension in my stomach area. And I mean, it also affected things like bowel movements and stuff like that. I was always constantly, just felt that nervous and tightness and just really uncomfortable there. And probably affected my digestion too, even though I wasn't aware of it at the time, but I'm sure it did. And then when I found that I actually consciously became a more relaxed person, my whole body function changed completely in that area. Just become very calm, and everything just seemed like there's no butterflies or.
Yeah. So that's an example of your mindset affecting your digestion and going in that order. But you can also go in the opposite order.
Yeah. And I was going to say that too, like going in the opposite direction, like, you know, when I've had, like, I can't even think of it, like sometimes I'll have like that nice greasy pizza or that greasy burger, you know, like before like a workout or before I'm about to do something that's going to be intense, and suddenly it's like I'm super lethargic and, you know, not really able to do what it is that I had intended to do, which then leads to frustration as a result of the decision that I had made prior to doing what it was that I had intended to do. And so, like, and then on top of it, you know, you get like the unsettledness in your stomach and, you know, not being able to, you know, quite grasp, you know, like completely why it is that you can do it. And then obviously going back to the gut, being able to explain a good part of that and the choice that you made, you know, prior to. So.
Mood food, exactly what we call mood food. There are things that really stimulate you and other things that can really make you lethargic, like you said, like pasta, for instance. If you would eat it at lunchtime and you have a very important meeting right after, or a few hours later you have this important project to finish before deadline or something, this can ruin your afternoon because you might not be able to focus anymore, for instance. This is a typical example I experienced before I was even aware of this kind of link, how food could impact my my energy, my mood overall.
Is there a difference between the type of foods that, you know, some have a more long-term effect, and others give you an immediate boost? I mean, like coffee as a drink, or, you know, gives you that caffeine rush and gives you that boost. But like from a food perspective, is there something that foods that are better for you longer term when we're talking about longer term health to maintain that?
Oh, definitely. I would, well, in my case, I use chicken broth or fish broth, like I mentioned last time, which is really something that will heal the gut in my case, because it contains glutamine. It's an element that is really essential to heal the gut when it's not healthy anymore, let's say. It's a part of our system. It's an essential building stone of the gut to heal it, let's say. So this is something that you can add, and in the long run it will have a benefit.
That's good, because I mean, my grandmother makes a beautiful chicken noodle soup that I love, so I might have to dig that out. And from that, sorry, go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, I was just gonna say, just adding in, I love fruits and vegetables, especially salads. Like I try to incorporate 2 to 3 salads in daily. And I come to find, like, it really helps me, especially if I do make some poor decisions, you know, like, and I decide that I want something, you know, like sweet or like a treat following that. I just make sure that I hit, like, I know that this sounds goofy, but like my fiber, like, quota. Like, I love like fibrous foods, things that keep the digestive system working, I guess, for a better lack of terms, and consistently like on the go. Obviously within reason. I mean, I don't like just completely you know, like blow it out of the water and eat all fiber. That would be absolutely terrible because it doesn't really get taken up in your body. But yeah, that's like my insight from that. So like just incorporating, you know, and then I mix and match it too. You can get super creative with salads. And then I love yogurt. Like I love like the I go for like just the high protein yogurt. So
coming from I grew up on a farm, and I just wondering from a perspective, and I played with this when I was growing up as well, is in relation to chewing the food. I mean, things, especially things like salads and stuff like that, those greeny type foods, and I think about it from the perspective of, like, you know, because I grew up on a farm, having, you know, the cows that had, you know, I think they've got 4 stomachs or something like that, and they to go through that process. How important is it from our perspective as a human to make sure that we actually do chew this stuff properly before we swallow it?
Well, very much, of course, very much.
I would say it's important. I mean, it goes back to the whole idea, and I think about it like I think about delayed gratification. Like, we're so driven to receive immediate gratification, and in slowing down chewing your food, you not only, you know, can gratify yourself more as a result from it, just from personal experience. You also know, like, much more readily when you're full versus when your stomach's already expanding and you're beyond full. So I think that there's something to be said about slowing down when you're, you know, like chewing your food and enjoying it. So, like, you know, like having like that little bite-sized brownie, however, enjoying every little bite to the fullest, you know, rather than having, you know, half the brownie batch before you're done. So, like, it's like you can have, like, you know, those nice, very flavorful, you know, opportunities. It's just, I think that we indulge far in excess of what's necessary.
So you're saying kind of make it like it's a Chinese tea ceremony with your
Exactly.
Have you guys heard of that book? I forget what the title is, but French Women Don't Get Fat, I believe is the title of the book.
I gotta look that up.
It's a good one. I think it came out like, you know, 5 or 6 years ago, but it's talking about the behavior around eating, as well as what people are eating that keeps them slimmer and healthier. And so when we're talking about eating like cheese and full cream and bread and all these things that are supposedly not okay, if you're trying to lose weight in North America, they tell you to avoid all those things. In France, you can sit down and eat brie and whatever you want, but what else are they doing? Well, they're sitting down to eat, taking your time, like you just said a moment ago, having a small amount of something and savoring it and eating slowly gives your brain a chance to catch up to the fact that you're satiated, which I believe the estimate is around 20 minutes that it takes to register that. Yep. So French Women Don't Get Fat is it's almost like it's talking about a whole mindset and a lifestyle around enjoying enjoyable things without indulging and becoming obese, and without overdoing it, without harming yourself.
Yeah, I'd say another culture too, like where they eat, and this is where it's hard, like to go just simply based off of calories. You look at like countries and cultures like Japan, where I mean they eat like they eat a fair amount of food, and it's comparable to what we do here in the States from what I've read. And it's interesting to see like what the content can do, like when you have like, you know, unprocessed foods versus processed, or, you know, all these variables that go into it. And it creates a curiosity factor for me that, you know, what really is the difference? Because here we have, you know, 2,800 calories, you know, a piece or whatever it is, like lined up. Yet you've got a culture where people are much more slender and much more, you know, mobile, and then you've got another culture where we're suffering and having consequences as a result of this. And, you know, maybe that has to do partially with reporting. I think that a big part of it, though, is like, you know, talking about, you know, preserved foods versus unpreserved foods. And you've gone into that before, Heather, in previous weeks. And I think that it's interesting thinking about the rule that you had presented a few weeks ago, the two times removed from nature.
Yeah. Well, something else that I learned early in studying nutrition and holistic diets 20 years ago, when I came across Udo Erasmus in his book Fats That Heal and Fats That Kill, that was incredibly eye-opening for me, because we were right in the thick of the whole non-fat, no fat, movement in North America at that time. And I believe, I'm hopeful that we are coming out of that now, because I think in conventional medicine and nutritionists in general are talking about how whole fats are good for you. But 10 years ago and 15 years ago, certainly, the average person believed that fat-free equaled healthy. And of course it doesn't whatsoever. And the other factor, aside from those being loaded with aspartame and all kinds of garbage to make them palatable, because when you remove the fat, they taste terrible. So they add garbage to them. But the other factor is that when you remove good fats from your diet, your liver, your gallbladder, which is holding the bile from the liver, does not get the signal to release bile, which means you're not digesting your fats in your food properly, which means you're not absorbing vitamin A, D, E, and K. So there's this whole chain reaction that happens when you're not eating fat. You actually can't digest well. You can't get all the nutrients out of your food. You need those.
Yes, that's also the, sorry, Stephen.
You're good, go ahead. No, I'll speak after. You're good.
Also, the big drama I find today with all these people having their gallbladder removed, they cannot absorb these fat-soluble vitamins anymore, because it's the gallbladder which is absorbing, is helping them.
Yes, they just have like a steady trickle of bile, but it's weak and it's not well timed for their meals. Yeah, it's tricky.
Only people knew how this chemical process is working. This is essential. If you know how your body works, you know, the stomach is releasing a lot of hydrochloric acid, and then this gallbladder is preventing that your intestines are getting burned, so this gallbladder is splashing out this bile, so that this chemical reaction is occurring. You know, just these little basic things, you know, this can help you to optimize your digestion, and this will prevent lots of chronic diseases in the end, because it's the gut that is really helping you to feed your body. I think this is really something that is essential in our education that is lacking today.
Well, and it's like going even from the other extreme too, where you have the very high fat diet and you don't have glucose. Like the brain, you know, like everybody thinks about, you know, like carbs being, you know, the enemy at points too. And if you remove it, you take away the essential energy source from your brain, and your brain absolutely needs glucose in order to function. Same thing with lactate. Like lactate is another energy source for the brain. And so when you take those away, people think like, oh yeah, it's going to pull from fat next. And it's like, no, it pulls from protein, which then breaks down your musculature in your body. And so you end up, you know, in a state where you're consistently having mood swings. And on top of it, you're doing potential damage to your body that can have a long-term effect that may never go away. Like they don't have like data to see, you know, to correlate with it. However, you know, so it's like we can't just say that you're unaffected, you know, as a result of doing this for an extended period of time. So it's just interesting.
But along the lines of what you're saying there, because I know there's many different schools of thought about the best diet or ideal diets, but what about if you're doing that, depriving yourself of sugar, but you're adding lots of protein, like with a paleo diet or with a keto diet? If you're putting that protein back in, then the idea is that you get ketones going and you burn fat and you're not deprived of protein. In your experience, do you see that if there's a healthy way to balance that, or for a very short period of time?
The thing that, so like, and the problem I think that people run into personally is they acknowledge sugar as being solely the only modality of carbohydrates. A lot of people that do ketogenic diets very appropriately seem to have like a good balance of vegetables in it, which vegetables are carbohydrates. Most people don't think of complex carbohydrates. And so a lot of what it is it's the portrayal, it's the image that's presented in their mind of what a carbohydrate is and what it really is. Because I'll sit there and I mean, I'm not a dietitian by any means, but I'll sit there and I'm like, I listen to him and I'm like, do you realize like, oh yeah, I don't eat carbohydrates, but yet you've got vegetables in your bin and you've got some, you know, fruits that have low glycemic indexes that are long processing fruits. And so like when you have that, you can give yourself the energy that's necessary. And so I think that's where it gets tricky, is that you're playing around with fats and proteins, yet you need to have that fine balance of complex carbohydrates in your system in order to succeed. As an athlete, I mean, I could never, with how much energy I'm putting out at points, there's no way that I could balance like a diet like that, at least at this point. I mean, there are time frames where I can handle it when I'm doing prolonged work, but when it comes to the need for the high energy, like for the high intensity work, I have to have that glucose readily available. Otherwise, I'm done. Like I'm just not, I won't be able to do it. Like I won't be able to put out, the power that I need to put out, in those moments where it requires a substantial amount of energy to burn. And if I don't have that energy, I can't just suddenly, magically in my head say, I've got the energy to do this, I can do this. It's physically impossible because my stores aren't, where they need to be. So I hope that kind of answers
people that feel that way as well when it comes to intermittent fasting, for example. This is why I think it's important whenever we talk about diets in general and nutrition in general, we can't really pretend that there's a cookie cutter solution for everyone, right? Because your energy expenditure, and also, right down to the really fine details of your microbiome, your health situation. Are you inflamed? Are you overly sensitive right now? Are you, what's going on in your life? Because the diet that will sit well with you right now and work for you may be different for someone else. And I definitely know people who say what you do because they are so active that intermittent fasting in any extreme sense doesn't really work for them, and that's fine. Yeah,
exactly. And there are times where I do intermittent fast. Like it's not to say that I don't do it. It's just like it's funny, and like we've had this conversation before, like where I'll like go like still like on my 2 week down, like my down period, my downtime from the sport, my whole like and my energy systems for whatever reason they dial back. Like I eat less, I consume less. It's generally in smaller windows. It does happen. It's very, like it's like you said, it's just from time to time, and it's variant depending upon what it is that I'm doing, and obviously mood too. Like I have to keep very close track of my mood, because I could end up in an overtrained state if I work too hard and I'm not consuming enough food. And that's the worst place to be. And I've been there before, and it can take several weeks to several months to get out of it. And I think the longest bout that I had from overtraining, it was probably 2 to 3 months worth of time that I lost on the bike or, competing as a result of it. And so I paid dearly for it with my mood, with my health. I was lethargic all the time. The list goes on and on. And so wrapping back around to gut health, like it's huge that how your body works and what it is that you need at any given moment.
That's very valuable.
Have you guys thought about mood and mindset and some of the recent studies that have come out about that, how it affects being overweight or just digestion in general? I've read and listened to some people taking apart those studies that show that if you are lonely, for instance, if you're eating by yourself, if you're upset, if you're stressed and anxious, then all of these things are affecting your digestion. And I think we've known for some time that those things also affect your ability to lose weight, how overweight you are. So when we're eating, the conclusion that I get from disseminating all this information is that what you're eating is important, but also your mindset, your management of your stress, where and when you're eating, all of these things are almost as important, because you will perceive your stomach actually utilizes that food differently depending on what your whole system is doing, whether you're good or bad.
I found from my experience too that like it was the opposite. It wasn't a case of being lonely or anything like that. excuse me, I was in a position where things were going extremely well. Everything was great, and as a result, I was in situations where I'd be going to really nice restaurants, and the food was really good, and so I'm celebrating all the time, eating lots of food, and I'd actually put on a lot of weight from the perspective of the quantity of food that I was eating, not because I needed to eat it, but it was nice and it was environment. It was just that attitude of success that you should have all this stuff and all this fine food. And as a result, I said I put on a lot of weight, and it really stood out for me. I was skiing in Switzerland, and I just found that I struggled, like my legs were burning because of the weight that I was carrying. And that was what was the trigger that I had to do something about this. And all I did, I lost 20 kilos purely by, I just decided that I wasn't going to eat as much. I didn't exercise anything. I really didn't exercise much at all. I just cut back, literally halved the food. I stopped linking that, success was eating all this food, and I just stopped. I lost the weight. Then the following year, when I was in the same place skiing again, dramatically different change. It just felt it was really exciting, and I didn't hurt my legs, which is a big thing. But it was all in that mindset, as you're talking about, Heather. It wasn't from a loneliness perspective, which I understand that that happens too. But it can be the other side where you're having that rewarding yourself, so to speak, for your own success.
The term fat and happy comes to mind. But your mind will actually affect how you physically digest your food as well, like the chemical reaction. It's why they say that digestion actually begins in the brain, because when you think of donuts, now you have me thinking of donuts, Stephen. If I picture a plate of donuts and I really think about it and I can smell it almost, my mouth will start watering. My body will actually get ready because we think we're about to eat a donut, and there's something happening in your stomach at that time. The whole process of digestion really begins with thought. And because that is such a strong connection, your brain and your gut brain, when people are depressed or angry or sad, it is affecting how well they draw nutrition from their food, and it affects obesity and all these and terrible digestive problems that people have, illnesses.
That's why when you go to your work and you're very stressed and you think, I'm going to eat a very healthy salad in between 2 meetings, you're not going to digest it properly because you're stressed. You're not going to absorb anything. While the guy who's very relaxed and is going to have his hot dog, he's going to digest very well the hot dog.
He might actually do better. I know that's the thing. That's why I say it's so hard to tell people this is good and this is bad, because there are a lot of factors that are contributing to your health. Yeah.
Well, that's a very important point that you both raised there, is that side of, if you are stressed and putting that pressure on your gut from a stress perspective, then going to all that effort of eating healthy is probably not going to do you a lot of benefit. So I think you mentioned at the very beginning, Heather, is it the combination of both, which is first chicken or egg, or maybe it's just do both together.
Yeah, that's what I think, because you can go in circles trying to figure out which do I start with? Do I start with my mindset, or do I start with healthy food? And Personally, I don't really think there's a right answer for that. I think both. We gotta try for both, because we're gonna have good days and bad days. We're gonna have cheat days and times when we can't, times when you can't talk yourself out of being stressed and you just are. And then you hope that the fact that you're eating well kind of makes up for that. Supplementing as well. If you know what you're doing with supplements, then you can try to boost some of the things you might not be absorbing well.
I had to, from that perspective of, if I was starting to feel a little bit stressed, I'd always had a go-to of whatever chocolate was in the house. And I've since, just don't have chocolate in the house now. And the classic example, it wasn't stressed. It was just because we went out and we were playing hockey and tennis with the little boy, come back, and then we had that, because we'd been fairly intense, had that need for food, and I normally would have gone for something sweet or something like that, but because didn't have it, we chopped up some apples and we ate them, and it was a much better feeling because that's what was there. So I think part of that is getting into that habit, because I did have a bad habit of going to the chocolate.
Right.
Now I've made a conscious choice to choose to have more healthier food there, and when I have that feeling, have that healthier food.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, Damian, because for me on the other end, I love a little bit of dark chocolate every day, and I still have a little, like, literally, like, I'll settle for one or two, like, dark chocolate, you know, like little peanut butter cups, and, you know, and it's like at some point throughout the day, and it's like in a very small dose, I'm not eating the whole bin, you know, and gonna, you know, like, indulge in it. It's just knowing that, you know, it's something that I really like, and I mean, given, you know, God forbid, I mean, I do work out and I do, you know, burn the excess, you know, it's a nice little, you know, treat to couple with, you know, even dinner, or, you know, like following dinner, just to put like the, you know, to top off the gas tank, is like how I like to coin it. So, but yeah, it's interesting like that, you know, just even seeing the variety between the two of us, and, you know, our perception of it. Like, I'm sure, like, for you, if chocolate's in front of you, it's like, oh, I gotta have as much of it as I can. Whereas for me, it's like a little bit's enough.
Yeah. For me, it's bread and butter. Oh my gosh. If I buy a loaf of sourdough bread, I could eat the whole thing.
I got to put it in the toaster. I'll put it in the toaster, butter it, and then I love that. All raisins.
There's nothing better than bread and butter for me. I just love that, and I don't really have a responsible limit for myself once I start eating it. So, but to your earlier point, planning ahead is what saves me, because I don't buy it. I don't bring it in the house. And if it's not in the house, then in a moment of weakness, you're going to go for something a little, you know, healthier and a little more responsible. You're not going to cave under pressure. But if you've loaded up your house full of the stuff that you know you struggle with, then in a moment of weakness, you know, you won't be able to maintain your healthy choices. So planning ahead. Yeah.
I feel quite safe then. I've got half a loaf of sourdough here, and I think it's, you know, the Atlantic will keep it.
You're also in the future, so I would have to time travel to get to it. So you're safe for now.
I think that whole mindset makes a big difference, though, and I've noticed from my perspective, and wanting to do something, making that choice, because I did make and now I do have. There's a Thomas the Tank Engine Easter egg. I've been quite lucky from the little boy perspective, because he's not he likes chocolate, but he won't. He's not one of those children that just devours it. He'll eat a little bit, and then he says, probably like you, Stephen, in that regard. He'll just have what he wants, and that's it, and the rest can stay there. And he's had Easter eggs for a year and never eaten it. But it is, I think, comes back to that mindset from that perspective, like you say, balancing both, but then choosing that's what you want to do, that you actually want to look after it. Because I know from my perspective, I never really thought about it from that gut perspective, as I mentioned at the start. But when you start thinking about it, oh, maybe this is something that I need to consider.
Well, and it's interesting too to think about it, like, from your guys' perspectives earlier too. Like, you know, in my house, like, I have a very different, like, when I was living with my parents for a month and a half, my diet, I noticed, changed ever so slightly just as a result of being around them, because of what it is that they would buy in their house. And so I had to make at points very cognizant decisions to, like, stick to what it was that I had planned, or to limit what it was that I was consuming. And, you know, because it was like, I mean, fortunately I didn't put on any weight this time around. I have gone there in the past though, and, like, you know, depending upon the time of the year and how it is that I'm working out, what it is that I'm doing, you know, there were times like where it was just like, you know, all bets were off, and I would just, like, indulge, like, at points, you know, in what it was that was at my parents' house. And then when I got back to my environment again, you know, away from home, my diet completely changed. So I think that, you know, being around people and, you know, and on your own, self-discipline versus, being in like a cohort kind of situation. You can have almost like the impact of others upon what it is that you're eating. And then also to your mood, like while you're, processing the food, or, it's just interesting to think about it from that entire perspective. So
we're starting to run out of time. Is there one takeaway you want to just share with everyone that they can take away and use before we go?
I would just riffing off what Stephen said there, that's really a good reflection of even North America or Western eating in general. I would say that we collectively struggle with eating impulsively, eating without a plan, and eating too much. So my wisdom, even though I am not an expert in nutrition, what I've gathered is, in general, that we eat too much. The portions are much too large. We eat impulsively. So we are eating with our eyes, as they say, right? And we don't have a plan. Planning ahead to have healthy snacks at home, and knowing that you're gonna get cravings and stuff, and then having something on hand that isn't toxic it means that you're gonna grab something healthy, and you're gonna do better in those impulsive moments. That's what I recommend.
Okay. Well, the only thing I would like to add is, for those who are very stressed and think I'm going to eat a salad before the meeting or between two meetings, and they want to do some conscious effort to help themselves, is to do a short breathing exercise, just to do some slow breathing. And just because our gut is very innervated, this can help to relax the system, let's say, and to absorb better the food.
Absolutely.
Adding on, I would say that pick a meal at some point throughout the day and truly gauge how it is that you feel while you're eating the meal and how you feel after you're eating the meal. So, and then adding on to what it is that you guys are doing, like I completely am on board with that. That's my one takeaway.
Beautiful. Well, thanks everyone. This has been Exceptional Effort, Mind and Body. Thanks to everyone for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all again next week.
Right.